We've talked a lot about euphemisms, new terminology, substituting words, ambiguous meanings, and they do have actual real-world outcomes. And there's a great example from the UK newspaper, The Telegraph, this week. It's a story about what a huge percentage of the population in the UK does not understand what transgender terminology actually means, and in really substantive ways. So the highlights of this are that a third of all people, I think they commissioned a survey, a third of all people surveyed didn't understand that the term trans woman, which of course means a man in a dress who claims to be a woman, they didn't understand that trans woman does not mean someone who was born female, but who claims to be male. They think trans woman means that's an actual woman, a woman with breasts and vagina who decided to be transgender. That's a serious, it's not their fault. I mean, this is confusing deliberately. But do you see the consequences of that confusion? When they hear the word trans woman, they're thinking actual female, and that has knock-on consequences. Their red flag radar won't ping. Their danger radar won't ping because they think they're talking about a woman. Convenient, isn't it? Yes, it's conscious. Yes, the people doing this language massaging mean this to happen. This is why you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not even allowed to ask questions about which is the proper terminology. That's showing a disturbing lack of faith. They're counting on you not understanding terms so that you think that you are voting for something the opposite of what you're really voting for, whether you're pulling a lever or answering a question in a survey or on a man on the street interview. It also explains why these activists react so hysterically when you ask a question, because the actual goal is to prevent clarity and to introduce the Tower of Babel. Here's a quote from the Telegraph story. More than a third of UK residents do not know that transgender women are biologically male, according to a poll, calling into question public understanding of the debate over gender. Campaigners said that the findings showed politicians, journalists, and pollsters needed to be more explicit when speaking about gender issues, as in many cases, the members of the public did not know what politically correct terms meant. Oh, you sweet summer children, they need to be more explicit. You have no idea who you're dealing with. What is this, a bunch of people who think there's good in everybody? Oh, they mean well. They don't understand. They're confusing people. Good God almighty. I'll read you a little bit more. The organization, I think, that conducted the poll said several bodies, such as the BBC, regularly use the terms without further explanation. For example, in stories about transgender participation in sports or the debate over self-identification. In many cases, the terms were adopted as a result of lobbying from trans rights activists who often claim it is discriminatory and offensive to refer to a transgender person's actual biological sex. However, the polling company said the results of its poll showed there were, quote, high levels of misunderstanding and confusion, end quote, about the terms, and that there was a need for language to be more explicit. But they're not going to do that. The language isn't going to get more explicit. The ambiguity is deliberate. It's a conscious choice. The activists have made clarity and asking questions off-limit and socially verboten. They characterize the very asking of questions as itself abusive. This is cluster B, in case you didn't pick up on that. Here's an example. Quote, the proportion of people who correctly said the terms referred to someone born male was 65% for the term transgender woman and 60% for trans woman. A lot of people didn't know. That means that about a third of these people think trans woman means an actual female, when in fact it means the opposite. This serves the activist purpose because it takes advantage of the way humans naturally perceive the difference between men and women, because actual women are in fact less physically dangerous. That's exactly what these troons want. It's brilliant, isn't it? It's wicked, it's depraved, and it is utterly brilliant.